Hi everyone, Gary here with another moment in music, and today we're looking at this incredible piece of music by Emerson, Lake and Palmer called Lucky Man. Did listen to this pretty obsessively when I was younger, and a little bit of a backstory to it.
All dressed in satin and waiting by the door. Ooh, what a lucky man he was.
It came about because the guys were putting the product together, the final debut album, and Eddie Offord, their producer, said, well look, we need another 3 minutes of music, 3 or 4 minutes of music, what have you got? And Greg Lake said, well, I don't know, I mean, Keith wasn't around, I don't think at that point. He might have been on the other side of the studio or whatever it was. And Greg sort of said, well, I've got this old folk song I did when I was about 9, I think I wrote it. And Eddie said, well, just play it to me. So he played it to him, and then Eddie said, well, look, go into the studio and why don't you do that? And Greg, of course, was a great vocalist and a producer in his own right. So he went in there and into the studio and did the guitar and did the vocals. He was doing acoustic guitar and electric guitar and vocals and bass. And it was pretty good. And then Carl Palmer came in and said, look, can I do anything on this? I'd like to put a little bit of percussion on it. And so Carl did something. And then, of course, Keith came for his turn, and he looked at it and he thought, gee, I don't know what I can really do here. And he, scratched his head, and he left the studio for a period of time. I'm not sure whether he went down the pub or whatever it was. And in the meantime, Greg and Eddie Offord had played the piece so far, and I thought, look, it's not bad. Anyway, Keith comes back, and they said to Keith, look, can you just play on the outro to this? We'd like you to improvise on the outro, the final few bars of the track. And Keith said, look, yeah, I'll go out there. And he just received a Moog synthesizer, and he hadn't really worked out how to use it. So he was in the studio trying to work out how to use it, and he was playing with the portamento effect. And in effect, what that meant was that you could hit an octave and then slide up to the upper note of that particular octave and slide back down. And so he was playing with that while the outro was happening, and he was playing some other stuff at the same time. He finished, he went into the control room, and Greg Lake and Eddie Offord were looking at each other going, well, gee, that's pretty good. And Keith was saying, look, I can do much better. Let me just go out there and do much better. And Greg and Eddie sort of was saying, I think, well, that's what we want. That's the track. And in the end, it was the track. That was the take that they went with Keith's playing on the outro. And that was how the piece came together. Unfortunately, Keith was a little bit upset because he had to keep playing that outro every time they played it live, because the debut album was so successful. I think they'd just done Isle of Wight or something like that, and it was massive. And that's the story of Lucky Man.